Well, hi everybody. Meteorologist Joe Cioffi. Welcome to the Joe Cioffi Weather Show. I have to tell you, I was actually planning on doing the Coffee with Cioffi show around noon today because I got back about 10:15 after leaving Marietta, Georgia, yesterday at 3 in the afternoon. I slept for all of an hour and a half in my car in a rest area in Virginia, and that just gave me enough of a nap that I was able to then get back on the road at 2:30 this morning and do the last 7 hours of it. And it was, you can kind of hear it in my voice when I get tired like this, where I had a complete lack of sleep. I tend to get very nasally very quickly. So I'm going to go on this live stream for as long as I can go on it, because at some point I'm going to just shut down. So I did take a nap, so I am feeling a bit better, but I'm getting too old for this. And my Toyota that I did this in, by the way, has 295,000 miles on it, 5,000 miles to go to get to 3,000. But I'm back in my little studio. I got my extra monitor. I'm thinking that I sound okay because Johnny Quest just gave me the 5x5 approval sign on the chat, which I can see while we're doing maps at the same time. So that's a good thing. So let's get started. We have have quite a bit going on tonight. It's nothing major. It's more nuisance than everything else. And I think at the end of the day, ice is going to be the bigger issue with regards to the weather in the Northeast for my area that I deal with anyway, Eastern PA to Southern New England. But ice is never fun. Snow, at least you can get traction on. It's inconvenient and can be a pain, but ice can be just absolutely destructive, and that is of the winter type weather, that's the one I really don't like seeing because it just makes things utterly difficult and impossible to get around. So let's look at this particular system. It's actually in two pieces, which complicates matters somewhat, and I think it makes for a rather um, a complicated forecast to communicate because of the fact that you can live in a general area and have that the area that I cover, and most of the time the weather is fairly uniform. But in this instance, some areas are going to get snow tomorrow, others not. Some areas are going to get some snow tomorrow night, others not. Some areas are going to get ice, and others not. So it's very easy to confuse forecasts. I'll hear people on Long Island talking about snow that's not meant for them or ice that's not meant for them. And this is just, part of the territory here. So on that note, and Scott Brewer, thanks for hitting Super Chat tonight. As always, greatly appreciated. It will help in my general recovery, by the way, because I need to get myself a bottle of wine at some point. So here we go. We've got the watches and warnings out tonight. Notice the area is it's stretched out east-west, and it's rather narrow. Okay, this goes to the very flat nature of what we're dealing with. This is not an intensifying storm. It's really two shortwave troughs that are moving east, one with a weak low that's going to be weakening as it reaches the coast, and that's the one for tomorrow. And then a stronger second low that comes tomorrow night into Tuesday. Excuse me. And that's going to start producing, that's going to be the producer of some of the ice. We've got winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings that are up tonight for central Illinois, central Missouri, eastern Kansas. Still got some flood watches up for southern West Virginia into eastern Kentucky. And actually, that reminds me also because I believe SPC is got a risk area for tomorrow. In fact, they do. So this is for this is day two, which is Monday into Tuesday. It's not often that you see this in December, but we've got an enhanced risk of severe weather across the central Gulf Coast, Louisiana into Mississippi, with marginal risk pushing up into Tennessee. So this is in response to that second shortwave and rather deep trough in the upper atmosphere that is moving along. And all of this is all going to create forecast headaches, already is in many areas. And this is what we're looking at snow-wise. So in terms of snow amounts here, we're not seeing anything crazy across Illinois and Indiana, where we've got these winter storm warnings up. And bear in mind that some areas have already gotten snow today. So this is in addition to what has already fallen. So we're looking at another half a foot on top of whatever is already on the ground. And you'll notice that the snows in the east, they tail off across Pennsylvania and New Jersey and into Long Island, and they pick up a little bit in upstate New York and into New England, but nothing crazy. It's just basically a 2 to 5, 3 to 6 inch type snowfall for New England. Also seeing snows up along the northern lake shores, and not exactly in the territory of Ruthless Goat. It's a little bit south of him this time, but looks like a 1 to 6 inch event for the southern half of Colorado and northern New Mexico. And we're seeing some snows scattered up the Sierra Nevadas and in the Cascades as we head up through Oregon and Washington, and also seeing some snows in parts of Idaho. We haven't had, it's been a little while, almost it's 2 weeks now since the major storm at the beginning of the month, when the entire nation was basically lit up like a Christmas tree with winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings, blizzard warnings, and all sorts of things from coast to coast. We're still kind of coming off that period. We've had a few um, weaker systems, systems that have produced different outcomes other than snow. But this one, at least, is kind of matching up to the fact that it's the middle of December. And by the way, if you look at some of the snowfall totals so far this season, in the areas around parts of the Great Lakes and in the Northeast, some places are producing some gangbuster numbers for the middle of December. I've read the other day that Hartford, Connecticut, had snow on the ground on, I think, 9 or 10 of the first 12 days of December, and that's only happened 4 other times in its weather history. So, those weather weenies out, those snow weenies out there who have been, every year, it really does get boring. Uh, I would say find something else to complain about, but they've been out there in force about how winter is over with. I mean, Jesus, it's just the 15th of December, and we've already shows you with the kind of a month that we've had, November and December, that we're pushing some extreme envelopes in some places. It may not necessarily be where you are, but they do cover the general areas of the Northeast and Great Lakes, which makes things pretty interesting for us. And usually, at some point, if this pattern has any kind of value or any kind of staying power, you'll see the switch flipped at some point, and the snow machines will rev up and shift further to the south. I've said this for the last week. I really like what I've seen from the standpoint of a snow lover. You should like what you've seen in the month of November and early December, even if it has not played out yet in your neck of the woods. I think if that pattern holds, it's going to gradually shift a little bit further to the south, and eventually your area, if it hasn't gotten snow, it will. So just relax, okay? It's the frustration of being a snow lover. That's just the way it works. Now, let me just explain a couple of things with regards to tomorrow for those of you who are watching in my area, from eastern PA to southern New England. And that is with respect to some of these winter weather advisories, because it can get confusing given that some are actually up for what's going to be going on overnight and into tomorrow morning, while other areas are have their winter weather advisories up for the time frame for Monday night into Tuesday. So we'll put up tomorrow morning's maps in terms of the watches and warnings that are up. And you'll notice that with respect to the advisories tomorrow morning, at least as of 10 a.m., it covers south central Pennsylvania, north central Maryland, westward into western Maryland, where we have a winter storm warning up there, and winter weather advisories in northern Virginia, northwestern Virginia, and into West Virginia. And you also see those flash flood watches up back through southern West Virginia and Kentucky. Now, that is because we have a lead shortwave piece that is coming out, and that piece is weakening as it moves eastward. So some areas to the east of that will see their winter weather advisories extended. So by the time we get to the afternoon, we will add New Jersey north and west of I-9, basically along and north and west of I-95 to the winter weather advisory mix, and in areas down to Philadelphia, uh, down to the Delaware border. Then, after that first shortwave is done, we're going to see the advisories shift again because of the fact that we've got this second area that is going to be impacting the second low. And we're going to add the Hudson Valley up into the Catskills and also Connecticut north of I-95, getting into the winter weather advisory world. And I think eventually you're going to see advisories go up for parts of upstate New York and for New England, although, this is a 2 to 5, 3 to 6 inch snowfall for New England is child's play compared to what they can see and what they've already seen in this month, at the beginning of the month, with the 2 foot plus snowstorm in some places. So just bear that in mind if you're reading advisories and you're reading forecasts and you're trying to figure out, just exactly what's going on. Please pay close attention to timestamps because that is, oftentimes certain offices will break down the forecast because if it's a long duration event. So just make sure you check the timestamps with respect to what's happening. Now, here's I think the issue tomorrow and tomorrow night into Tuesday, the bigger issue I believe is going to be ice accretion. And one of the things we're going to look for is the 32-degree temperature, the isotherm, which is going to get just north and west of the coast, if only barely. There's not a push here, especially at the low levels of the atmosphere. There's hardly any wind. I was looking at some of the numerical guidance for later Monday and Monday night into Tuesday morning. There's hardly a breath of wind. It's very light, northeasterly, or just dead calm. And sometimes you can get cold air and just kind of lodge in a situation like that. So, I'm optimistic that places along the immediate coast, like Long Island, immediate coastal Connecticut, New York City, the coastal and southern counties of New Jersey, and even into southeastern Pennsylvania, up to just north and west of Philadelphia and Trenton. I think those areas are not going to have a problem. But north and west of there will be some ice accretion on the order of 1/10 to 2/10 of an inch, and maybe even some areas getting over 1/4 of an inch of this. Now, I discussed this on my Weather in 10 video for the Patreon folks. There's two different forecast offices that do this zone. The one to the south gets up to the Pennsylvania state line and covers Maryland. And then you've got State College, which does, I think Wakefield, Virginia does the one to the south. And the one to the north, you've got State College. And they've got this area in and around Harrisburg and Lancaster where you don't really see sort of solid coverage of icing. Now, I'm guessing that that's because of topography. Maybe they're thinking that cold air doesn't necessarily get trapped in that particular region. Once upon a time, it was strictly guesswork when it came to that. But models have gotten sophisticated enough now where they can actually pick out their spots where you might see freezing and you might not. So maybe that's what they did. Maryland and southward from that Weather Service office sees it a bit differently because it's kind of hard to go up to the state line and, unless there's a huge mountain range that runs right along the border that I'm not aware of, to have 1600s and 2400s and 1400s on one side and then just to cross over on the other and have nothing seems a bit odd to me. So I actually did pull up. I don't know if I still have it up. I think I might have closed it off, but I did put it up on Patreon from WPC's ice probability forecast, and they seem to, they have a little bit of what you're seeing down in on that map there, but not quite as extreme. So I'm just going to sort of respect WPC and say that there's more of a general area with regards to snow. I'm just looking at some of the snow amounts so far today. If you've ever used this site here, It's really pretty good because the snow amounts actually load as they come out. So I'm going to put the link up in the chat for you, and this way you can check out numbers of different spots, and then they scroll on the. You can add and the entries come up on the side. So Pleasant Hill, Missouri, for example, 8 inches, 7 for Lee's Summit, 6.5 for Vandiver, southeast of Vandiver or Vandiver. Wellington, that I know how to say, 6 inches. Warrensburg, Missouri, 6 inches. Let's see, Charleston, Illinois, 4.5. Uh, I would have it's Titopolis, 5 inches. Forgive me, maybe some Neoga, Illinois, 4 inches. Let me get out of Illinois before I run out of things. I'll be able to find more things I can't pronounce. And in and around Kansas City, northwest Lake Winnebago, Missouri, as we said, 6.5. So there seems to be a concentration of heavy snow there. And St. Louis, um, Elsa, 4 inches there. St. Peters, Missouri, 4. Ferguson, Missouri, 2. St. Louis, about a little over 2. So you can. This is pretty good because you can scroll on the map, and the numbers are fairly close to real time here. 5:17 p.m. for example. We've got this new one that just posted here in Kansas. So Volland, Kansas at 5:19, at 5:17, 11.5. 6 miles southeast of St. George, 9.5. 9 inches in Junction City, west southwest of Bridgeport, Kansas, 9. So this is pretty cool. This website. Just run up into Nebraska, seeing some numbers here. West Stapleton at 3.5. 16 southwest of Mullen, Nebraska, 3.5. Couple of 4.5 inch amounts in 2 spots there. Northwest Hershey, Nebraska, 4.5. Let's check out some numbers west of Denver. Aspen Springs, 9.5. Southwest Eldora, Colorado, 19.6. 26 for Cameron Pass, 7 miles southeast of Cameron Pass. Let's see if we get a little closer. Doesn't look like much fell in and around Denver. Up around Fort Collins, looks like about a 1 to 3, 2 to 4 inch snowfall there, but some pretty big numbers just to the west of I-25 going into the mountains there, Boulder and beyond. So very impressive here. Let's take a look just to see if there's anything out on the west coast. We don't. We should pay a little more attention. So around Reno and Carson City, Cold Springs Valley, Nevada, 3.4. Carson City, near Mount Rose Summit, 4 inches. Otherwise, it looks like it's pretty quiet out in the West Coast. So a pretty handy tool for you for snow lovers to use. Ruthless Goat. The Weather Service has some great stuff. You just need to know where to find it. Yeah, a lot of times I by accident, and then I wind up bookmarking it, and then I don't recognize the bookmark because I don't necessarily come back to it right away. I got my 200 or 300 things bookmarked, and I don't even know what half the stuff is anymore. So, but yeah, they do, and I've said this many times when I go on some of the European weather services from various countries. It's pathetic what they have, quite frankly, and the Weather Service just does an absolutely phenomenal job in excuse me, in creating really useful, usable tools for the weather geeks and the weather professionals that are out there. Really useful tools in order to get our messages across. Okay, I'm just getting a little warning error saying that there might be a little bit of a signal issue. So if you're getting some buffering, that's might be coming from my end. So just bear that in mind. So on the surface map tonight, we've got cold air, this high that is in Wisconsin down to Ohio, and we've got temperatures in the teens and even single numbers as we go up much further to the north near the border. But this is some colder air that's trying to build in. You're trying to get a little bit of a high to build up in upstate New York and in western New England tomorrow. It's going to be weak. but it does set the table for the frontal boundary that lies to the south. And no, there's no real well-developed storm. You've got a 1,006 low, excuse me, in northeastern Texas. For those of you joining late, I drove from Atlanta 16 hours, and I'm absolutely dead tired. And when I get absolutely dead tired, I start to sound like I have the worst cold. So I'm carrying this for as long as I can carry it. But anyway, there's our frontal boundary stall to the south, and that's going to create our issues for tomorrow. So let's look at the surface map and see what's going on. Actually, I think the better map to look at is the upper air, because I think this really shows you why this is going to play out the way it is. And we've got two short waves that are moving eastward. And one of the issues is in the east, you have a trough off the east coast between Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. You've got a short wave here that is running out to the northeast, and there's a little bit more energy right behind it. And what happens is the ridge in the east is going to pop up a little bit tomorrow. You see it here, how it pops up. And as a result, the first short wave, which you can't, you know what? Actually, the first short wave, it's hard to see. It's already weak. It's kind of sitting there in East Texas and in Oklahoma, moving out to the northeast. So when we roll this along tomorrow, that short wave actually runs into the ridge position in the east, and it can't do anything. Okay, it just gets flattened out. So that first area of precip that's going on now is going to move into Pennsylvania, southern Pennsylvania overnight, and then it's just going to kind of sit there and fall apart. Let's look at that radar. In fact, if you look at the radar presentation tonight, you're thinking, well, you know what? This isn't half bad looking. You've got snow moving on the northeastern end of this and through northern West Virginia, back through southern Ohio and to Indiana and Illinois, and some heavy rain showers down into south into Kentucky. If this were to hold together, we probably would wind up with several inches or 6 out of this. But unfortunately for snow lovers, because of the fact that this short wave is moving into a ridge position, you're going to see that snow area weaken. And thank you, Steve LaPointe, for hitting Super Chat tonight. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Stephen. That first short wave gets wiped out. We get whatever we get out of it tomorrow, which may not be much, and I'll show you who gets what, when, and where. Then the second short wave swings in for Monday night and Tuesday. Now, by this point, you're going to erode some of the cold air that you're building up for tonight into tomorrow. So the coastal areas kind of lose it, but from the standpoint of going over to rain. But just inland of the coast, you've got this area that could wind up with an icing situation. And this is a fairly good-looking trough that is moving eastward here for Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, this upper low is digging southeastward. So not only do we have cold air coming back in, but I think we're going to have this upper low passing very, very close across New York State and into New England. So I think there could be certainly some lake effect snows are going to break out with this. And there will be some snow showers and maybe even a few snow squalls that move southeastward and head for the coast with a bit of a cold front that comes through on Wednesday. So when we get to Wednesday, we'll see if that winds up being anything. And then after that, well, this is where it starts to get a little bit confusing because we've been seeing a lot of the weather models in the long range kind of dancing around the idea of some kind of storm in the east. And the problem here is that you've got ridges on both coasts and the trough in the middle. And while the southern part of that trough amplifies, the northern part just basically moves it along and it kicks out to the east. Now, some runs have tried to phase it. If we go back to one of the runs from last night, we saw the European and the GFS actually get rather dynamic with this. It's been, showing up on some runs and not on others. And, sometimes when it has been showing up, it's been showing up where you wind up with a storm well offshore. But look at this trough here. This was from last night's 6Z run phased in and goes negative as it swings out to the coast and really amplifies. So this actually produced on that particular run, you wound up with a pretty interesting looking storm off the Carolina coastline with snows right along the immediate coast. I mean, it was a lovely fantasy land for those of you who want to see something like this. But again, models are dancing around a pattern that's having some trouble stabilizing. And when I show you the teleconnections, you'll understand why. Robert Russo, thank you. Hitting super chat tonight. Really appreciate it greatly. Thank you. Uh, when I go to sleep tonight, put my head on the pillow. It's just going to go. I'm going to go right out like a light. So let's run back through tonight, and we're going to have the new NAM out soon. So let's do it with the GFS, and then we'll have some of the new, at least enough of the new NAM to take us through the day tomorrow. We could also look at the SREF model, the plumes, to see if they're offering any kind of bullish or bearish views on this. So again, I don't know. I wouldn't put a whole lot of faith in whatever any of these model runs are doing. They seem to be just kind of dancing around all this energy that's going to be in the atmosphere and the rather blocky pattern that has developed. It's not a perfect blocky pattern, but it's certainly interesting enough. But watching the area for tomorrow morning, you see this here at 1 a.m. Snow at least aloft will be in east central PA, southeast. I'm sorry, south central PA. Just about getting ready to move into southeast PA. But by zeros by 7 a.m. The area is kind of shrunk down, at least according to the world of GFS paints. This is that first shortwave weakening, and now you're seeing the second shortwave amplifying, bringing another band of snow to central Illinois, central Indiana, and central Ohio. But again, the cold air here in the east, there's no big high to the north. You've got the low that's east of Newfoundland trying to keep this suppressed to the south, but we don't have higher pressures building around it up in eastern Canada. It's a low pressure type map. It would be nice if we had like a 1020 or a 1024 high up there, but the pressures are just too low. And you see what the model does. It brings up rain and freezing rain and sleet Monday night and Tuesday morning. The NAM is actually a bit more aggressive, or at least was in its last run. In terms of total precip, it's not producing a whole lot. We're seeing some snow in northwest PA, upstate New York, and into New England with this. But again, as I said earlier, it's a 2 to 4, 3 to 6 inch event, which for them is no big deal. Low moves out. Then we get windy and colder. And here's that cold front I'm talking about for Wednesday when that deep upper trough drops southeastward right in here. And there's very cold air behind it. So that cold air is going to get in here for Wednesday night and Thursday. And when that upper trough moves through Wednesday afternoon, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some snow showers or even a few snow squalls with that when it goes by. So a pretty interesting situation ahead. Now, let me widen out to the upper air so we can look at the longer range here just a little bit. One thing to notice, by the way, well, I have it here at 84 hours, and we're going to go beyond that. But notice up at the very top, okay, in the North Atlantic, let me get my mouse back and get my web paint up. So all through up here, up east of Labrador, over Greenland, throughout the polar region, it's all above normal pressures. And your jet stream is really suppressed pretty far to the south. You've got an upper low north of the Azores. You've got an upper low sitting just north of Lake Huron. You got another one in the Gulf of Alaska. You've got a split flow because you've got energy that comes in the southern stream. A little bit of a Canadian connection driving into the Northeast with the upper low diving. So for cold weather lovers, that's one thing you want to see. And going forward, we're actually going to not only keep the the negative NAO, but I mean it really strengthens like mad here. I actually have this is the run from last night that made the storm off the East Coast because it really just kind of went nuts here with this upper high that it builds up in over Labrador. So that drops this trough down pretty far south into Virginia and North Carolina. The trough is off the west coast, and you've got a ridge that's building up the Rockies. So it's a very dynamic looking pattern, no doubt. The new run, which I think is probably a bit more, uh, uh, well, the new run is certainly more recent. Perhaps it paints a scenario that might be a bit more likely, but still has the same signature look to it here, where you've got higher than normal pressures up in the polar regions and in eastern Canada. You have a little bit of a Canadian connection bringing cold air, but you see how it just kind of really suppresses on this run that feature way to the south and east. We're going to hold the idea of the if it not uh, with the higher pressures maybe going all the way, but certainly above normal pressures in the North Atlantic and below normal pressures in the Atlantic from 40 north up to about 60 north, which is where your NAO is defined. And you'll notice, we've got short waves that come in and drop down and move along in the southern part of the jet. You do have a little bit of Canadian connection here as far as bringing some cold air into the Northeast. It may not be, solid Arctic cold, but with normals dropping the way they are, and given what we've seen, how the cold air has set up this month, the snow cover that's up in Canada, you have to view this from the standpoint of a snow lover. You have to view this in a positive way going forward. You look at these broad patterns, and you just kind of you need a leg up with the broad patterns. Then you wait to see if the actual short range patterns match up to what you would like. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. Take a look at the teleconnections here from the 0Z run from last night. Excuse me, folks. Sorry about that. Again, straight to bed. But take a look at what the NAO does. I mean, it's crashing to neutral and then goes negative for pretty much the rest of the month. The PNA, the Pacific North America Index, is kind of going back and forth in a weak positive, weak negative way. It's not off the wall negative. But one of the things I did notice is that the East Pacific Oscillation, which actually kind of spikes a bit positive here around the 19th, 20th, the end of this week, it falls fairly quickly to the neutral line around right going into Christmas Eve, and then goes negative for the last week of the month of December and heading toward the new year. So pretty interesting there that negative EPO and the negative NAO are combining. So perhaps that will signal some colder weather for the eastern United States up and down the East Coast as we head toward the end of the month and the beginning of January. We'll see. The PNA, that's these, again, always remember with these teleconnections, I've said this many times, they are snapshots of the atmosphere. They're snapshots of one particular model run, and this was the run from last night. They're done once a day off the ensembles, which at least gives you kind of a broad sense. To look at the ensembles in the long range might work better than looking at, say, the operational run. But the bottom line is this negative NAO seems to be appearing a bit more frequently this beginning of winter so far, the late fall, early winter pattern. Let's see if it holds going forward. But you again, you can, if you're a snow lover, you should not be at all discouraged with what you see, even though it hasn't exactly played out according to plan. And of course, location is everything, because I know Timothy Veltman, for example, who's up north of Albany, he's had more snow than he knows what to do with this winter. But if you're down, say, in central New Jersey, southern New Jersey, you're kind of waiting for it. It's a little early for you guys anyway. The new 0Z HRRR has a decent burst of snow for New York City, Long Island around 8 p.m. And not sure if that will actually materialize. The 18Z NAM, Ryan, also showed that idea that maybe there would be a burst. So let's take a look. We can go to those two model runs. So we'll have the new NAM here. So give me one moment. The voice is going to go soon. It just is. So let's see if we can hold on to this. See how much of the new NAM do we have. All right, well, we have 29 hours. That goes to midnight tomorrow night. So the new NAM, so here's that first area. And I think just to be fair, let me widen this out a bit. So here's that first area. Again, looks impressive enough on the radar tonight. It weakens pretty quickly tomorrow. Never really gets into New Jersey. Almost falls apart and gone by the time we get to 3 in the afternoon. Then we wait for the next area to rev up. And it kind of has New York City on the edge and a burst in northern New Jersey in the Hudson Valley. And then you see that sleet and freezing rain that is right behind it. So my sense on this is that the first system, I think it's if you're thinking you're going to get anything more than a coating to an inch or two in the places that do get snow, I doubt that that's going to happen. Um, it really does look like this kind of weakens fairly quickly because it moves into that ridge position. The HRRR model that Ryan pointed out, so there's that first area in PA. And look how quickly it goes. This is at 1 a.m. And by 4 a.m., it's already starting to weaken here. And by 7 a.m., it's really getting shredded up. You get a little bit of residual precip left over that moves over New Jersey. But what is that? I mean, it's just probably, some flakes of snow in the mix, and that's it. Now, here comes the second area, and there's that little burst of blue that occurs. So, you know what? If it winds up being, the atmosphere winds up being ever so slightly colder, maybe you can pull it off with regards to, I wanted to see if there was an 850 for this, but there isn't. So maybe you might be able to pull it off with respect to a burst of snow that puts down a quick inch or so, or inch or two, and then the inland areas go over to sleet and freezing rain, and we'll see how long it holds on to that. There's your surface low in northern West Virginia. If you had a little bit more of a high to the north pressing down, you probably would have the snow line somewhere in central or southern New Jersey in a situation like this and force the low to redevelop off the Delaware coast and move out. But unfortunately, while you do have a blocky pattern, there's other things that are missing here in the equation that's keeping pressures low in southeastern Canada. That's as happened so many times. You think you got a great looking block like we did going into the first weekend of December with the big storm, and it was great for snow lovers in upstate New York and New England, but it didn't really extend that far south. It was strong, but not strong enough. And then there's seasonal patterns that are important too. So you're likely to see something like that maybe deeper into the winter, or maybe as you go into a month of March when systems like to be further south a lot of the time. So we'll see. Again, I'm not at all discouraged as a snow lover. So you know what, folks? It's 9:10, and I'm really exhausted. I napped for 2 hours today, and I've been up pretty much for, let's see. So yesterday, I got up at 5:30 a.m. I slept an hour and a half in my car, 2 hours. I've only got about 3 hours sleep in the last 48 hours. So I need to go to sleep. So thanks for being here tonight. Appreciate you joining me on the live stream. We will, of course, tomorrow is a Monday, so we'll be back to normal shenanigans here. We didn't do a coffee with Cioffi today because I just didn't have it. I got in here. I really thought I was going to do it, and then all the tiredness just kind of took over, and all I wanted to do was just take my nap, which I did. So we'll get things back to normal tomorrow. Live stream at 7 o'clock. They'll be posted throughout the day. You've got weather in 5, which I haven't been able to do this weekend, but I will do. They will resume tomorrow morning, so you get a quick morning update of what's going on. And of course, Patreon members, you got your weather in 10 today, which goes into this system in detail. So if you need a review, go into the Patreon platform and take a look at weather in 10. It actually is only a little over 10 minutes today. I behaved myself. All right, have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night, everybody.